Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome friends to this first lecture of this course Soil Technology, course number 20 AG20103. I am Dr. Somshubra Chakraborty. I am currently serving as an assistant professor in the Agricultural Food Engineering Department of IIT Kharagpur, and I will be teaching you this course along with Professor B.S. Das of Agricultural and Food Engineering Department of IIT Kharagpur. So in this first lecture, we are going to discuss about the basic overview of soils. Now, these are the different topics which will be covered in this course. So basically there are 21 topics which will be jointly covered by me and Professor B.S. Das. So these are the topics. First of all, we are going to discuss the basic overview of soil. So I am going to discuss this, and in our the next topic will be weathering and soil formation. The third topic will be covered by Professor B.S. Das, that is soil texture, and also he will cover soil structure. He will also cover volume composition, mass volume relationship. Then I will cover soil inorganic colloid and soil organic colloid. After that, I will be covering the ion exchange in soil. Next, Professor B.S. Das will cover soil water content and soil water potentials, and he will also cover soil water flow, soil hydraulic properties, soil thermal properties, and heat transport in soils. After that, I will be covering soil macronutrients, soil micronutrients, soil testing, and then Professor B.S. Das will take over from there, and also he will cover nutrient transport processes in soil and advective dispersive transport and soil consistency. The last two topics which will be covered by me are problem soils and their management, and finally we will be talking about soil classification. So these are the major topics which we are going to cover in this course, and today we are going to cover the first topic, that is basic overview of soil. Now, before starting, we may be wondering that what is the definition of soil? Well, the definition of soil can be variable depending on who is giving this definition, but a generally acceptable term for soil or generally acceptable definition for soil is the upper layer of earth in which plants grow, a black or dark brown material typically consisting of a mixture of organic remains, clay and rock particles. Now, what do you understand by clay? What is soil organic matter? We will discuss in details in our coming lectures. And today we will try to have a basic overview of this clay, soil organic matter and other soil important components. So, the geologic definition of soil says that it is a loose surface of the earth as distinguished from solid bedrock, support of plant life not required. So, geologic definition, according to the geologic definition, it is basically the loose surface of the earth as distinguished from solid bedrock. Okay, and there is a distinct difference between sediments and soils. So, sediments basically, as you know, that sediment and sedimentary rock, the sedimentary rock basically forms due to the deposition of sediments and followed by their hardening or diagenesis process. So these are some of the sedimentary rocks where you can clearly see the sedimentation procedure. Now, what is the difference between this sedimentary rock and soil? Well, in soil also you will find that there are certain layers or horizons. However, these layers or horizons are formed due to various processes, and these horizons differ from each other based on their physical, chemical and morphological properties. We will talk more about this soil horizon in the coming slides. So, a combination of soil horizons or layer are known as soil profile. Now, if you dig down deep into any soil vertically, and you will see that it is made of layers or horizons. Just like here you can see this is a vertical section of soil. So if you dig down the soil, you will see different horizons. What are these different horizons? We will see at the top O horizon, followed by A horizon, then B horizon, then C horizon, followed by R or bedrock. So, if we dig down deep into any soil, we will see that it is made up of layers or horizons as we are seeing here. Now, put the horizons together and they form a soil profile. So, the collection of soil horizons is called a soil profile. Like a biography, each profile tells a story about the life of a soil. Remember, soil formation is a very time consuming process. It takes hundreds of years to develop 1 inch of soil. So, these layers which develops due to specific pedogenic processes or specific physical chemical processes will basically reflect the origin and will give you the basic snapshot of the soil formation. So, it is very important to understand or to identify the soil profile and the horizons which are present in the soil profile. For example, if we are talking about these individual horizons, the O horizon is the horizon which shows the dominance of organic matter. So it is basically the surface horizon which generally occurs in between 0 to 2 inches of the upper layer, and this is basically dark in color due to the presence of organic matter, due to the mixing of organic matter with other minerals, and just beneath this O horizon or there is another mineral horizon which is known as A horizon. So below this A horizon, obviously this A horizon will contain somewhat low or somewhat less organic matter as compared to the O horizon. Now the B horizon, which occurs below the A horizon, also shows different characteristics, and the C or the parent materials are basically the fragmented parts from the bedrock. Bedrock is the material or the parent rock from which this soil basically forms. Now you know that all soil formed from rocks. Okay, so the formation of the soil from this parent rock takes huge amount of time, and also during the process of soil development it will develop these individual soil horizons. Unless we see these soil horizons formed, we cannot tell that a soil has been formed, because the basic criteria for being a soil is to develop these individual horizons, at least some of these horizons in the profile. Now, the soil formation, if we talk about soil formation, we have to understand that soils are limited natural resources. They are considered renewable because they are constantly forming. Though this is true, their formation occurs at extremely slow rate. In fact, as I told you in our last slide, 1 inch of topsoil can take several hundred years or more to develop. Now, soil formation rates vary across the planet. The slowest rates occur in cold, dry region. It generally takes more than 1000 years, and the fastest rates are in hot and wet region, which also takes several hundred years. Now, why this variation we will discuss in the weathering chapter. Now, what are the major functions of soil? Well, there are 6 major functions of soil. First of all, it gives the foundation for roots and structure. It also acts as a home to plants and animals. It grows things in it. It contains and filters water. It helps dispose of waste. And finally, it is the basis for recreation areas. So these are the 6 major functions of soil. Now, if you want to discuss it more, remember that soil acts as a medium for plant growth or biomaterial production. So no plant growth can be possible without the presence of soil. Now, it is also habitat for soil organisms, making up more than half of all life of the planet. It is also a biochemical or nutrient reactor which absorbs, releases or dissolves and transforms inorganic and biochemical compounds such as essential plant nutrients, pesticides, minerals, heavy metals and numerous other compounds. So in the soil you will see there is a continuous biochemical reactions are going on, and as a result of these biochemical reactions there is continuous changes of essential plant nutrients, pesticides, minerals, heavy metals and other compounds which are present in the soil. Soil also acts as a hydrologic buffer which stores, that is water holding capacity, in terms of water holding capacity, which stores and regulates the flow of water in the landscape. So in other words, it controls the drainage in the soil. It controls the drainage, and importantly it gives the foundation for physical support of structures including everything from plants to skyscrapers. So you see, these are the major functions of soil. Now if we consider soil as a service provider, obviously this picture gives us a better understanding that soil helps for recycling system for nutrients and organic wastes. So soil is a great medium where we can see the recycling of nutrients as well as the organic waste, because soil is the material where we can see that any plants or animals, after their death their decomposition occurs. So the recycling of organic waste always occur in the soil. It acts as a habitat for soil organism. Millions of micro and macroorganisms reside in the soil. It helps for building the engineering structure. So it is essentially an engineering medium where we build different big dams and big structures, buildings and so on. It is also provides as a system for water supply and purification. And finally, it helps for plant growth. So basically it acts as a medium for plant growth. So you can see that soil takes, soil plays a very important part in our civilization. Without soil, it would not be possible to maintain our civilization, because in each and every aspect there is somehow a connection with the soil. However, unfortunately, soil being the most valuable natural resources, it is also the most neglected natural resources too. So, we shall be very careful while managing the soil for sustainable agriculture, as well as maintenance of the natural equilibrium. Now, what is soil science? By the way, soil science is a study of soil as a natural resource on the surface of the earth, including soil formation, classification, mapping, physical, chemical, biological and fertility properties of soils, and these properties in relation to the use and management of soils. So soil science not only deals with the soil formation, their classification and mapping, it also deals with several physical, chemical and biological properties of the soil. It also deals with the fertility properties of the soils, and these properties in relation to the use and management of soils. So not only we monitor, as a soil scientist, not only we monitor the physical, chemical and biological properties of the soil, we also find out the ways to maintain those favorable physical, chemical and biological properties, and we give the solution as a soil scientist regarding the best management practices of soil. Now, as you can see, a soil scientist is checking a soil profile, examining a soil profile here in this picture, and trying to ascertain the origin of this particular soil. Soil scientists are very experienced persons, and they're experienced scientists who can infer and who can analyze the soil using the standard protocol, and based on the results they can identify several soil biogeochemical processes and rationalize the behavior of the soil, which varies from one place to another place. Now obviously soil is a spatially varying matrix, so you will see that the soil from one place is differing from soil of other places depending on several characteristics. It may be physical, chemical and biological characteristics. So the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service has mapped the global soil regions based on their characteristics. Now, as you can see, the global soils are divided into several soil classes. We call them soil orders. We'll discuss about the orders in details when we'll talk about the soil classification. Now, one thing is clear that each and every countries are basically composed of more than one types of soil. So that shows that soil is highly heterogeneous and also very spatially. So as you can see, soils of India are also having more than one categories, just like the other countries. So if we are talking about the soil science, obviously this soil science has several subdivisions. What are these subdivisions? The subdivisions of soil science are continuously growing, but these 8 are generally well accepted subdivisions of soil science. First of all, soil chemistry, which deals with the different chemical processes of the soil. Then soil physics, which deals with the different physical processes of the soil and their interpretation. Soil microbiology deals with the microbial content and their interaction in the soils, and how they can influence different soil biogeochemical processes. Pedology is a specialized branch of soil science which deals with the soil origin and classification. Soil fertility is the branch of soil science which deals with the fertility properties of the soil and how soil can maintain the plant's life by supplying the essential nutrients to the plants. Then soil mineralogy. The soil mineralogy subdivision deals with mineral composition and their structure. Soil pollution is a specialized subdivision which deals with the polluted soils and their management. And the recently developed soil discipline is digital soil mapping, which deals with the application of digital data as well as application of different data analytics and machine learning algorithms for producing high resolution soil maps. And also there are other disciplines also, subdivisions also, which are continuously growing from soil science discipline. So this soil chemistry, soil physics, soil microbiology, pedology, soil fertility, soil mineralogy, soil pollution, digital soil mapping have their specialized scientist base, and the soil scientists are known as either soil chemist or soil physicist or soil microbiologist and pedologist, so on and so forth. So what are the two approaches of studying soil science? Well, there are mainly two approaches of studying the soil science. First of all, edaphology. Edaphology basically deals with the study of soil in terms of plant nutrition. So whenever we talk about soil fertility, that is basically the edaphological point of view of soil science. However, the pedology, as I have already told you, it deals with the study of soil origin and classification. So pedology gives us different informations. Now the definition of pedology is that study of soil as naturally occurring phenomena is called pedology. And this term pedology comes from this Greek word pedon, that means soil or earth. So this pedology term came from this Greek word pedon, which means soil or earth. Now pedology takes into account three important things. First of all, factors and processes of soil formation, soil features and classifications, and distribution of soil types. So these are very important, fundamental aspects of pedology, and a pedologist is able to identify the important factors and processes for soil formation of a particular area. He or she can identify soil features and classifications, and also they can classify the soil based on the soil physical, chemical and morphological features, and also they can map the distribution of the soil types across the world. Okay, now we have covered the basics of soil definition and the soil science and their subdisciplines. Let us talk about soil components. What are the components of a soil? Now if you see, the soil as a typical soil is about 50% solids. Among this 50% solid, 45% are mineral matter and only 5% are organic matter, and 50% are void spaces or pore spaces. So a typical soil contains 50% solid and 50% void, of which half is occupied by water and half by gas. So among this 50%, 25% is occupied by air and 25% is occupied by water. The percent soil minerals and organic content can be treated as a constant in the short term, while the percent of soil water and gas content is considerably highly variable, whereby a rise in one is simultaneously balanced by a reduction in the other. Things will be more clear when we see this diagram. So as you can see, volume wise, this soil is divided into 50% solid space and 50% pore space. This 50% solid is occupied by this mineral fraction, which occupies 45% of it, and organic matter contains only 5%. However, this rest 50% will be covered by air and water. Air will be 25% and water will be also covering 25%. However, their content is highly variable depending on the conditions. Now, what are the importance of this pore space? Well, the pore space is very important because the pore space allowed for the infiltration and movement of air and water. Without this pore space, the water and air cannot move into the soil, both of which are critical for life existing in the soil. That means, I have already told you millions of microorganisms remains in the soil. So they require air, and also plant roots require air or oxygen for their life. So it is very important that the air should move inside the soil, and also it is very important that water should move or infiltrate in the soil from the surface to maintain the life within the soil. However, if the pore space are reduced, then you can see that a phenomena called compaction will occur. So this compaction is a common problem with soil, which reduces this pore space, preventing air and water from reaching plant roots and soil organisms. As you can see, these are some compact layers formed due to the movement of heavy machineries or tractors over the soil, and as a result of that, the pore spaces are reduced, and as a result of that, soil compaction occurred. When soil compaction occurred, there is very little movement of air and water, and as a result, plant roots and plant organisms suffers or die. So this is the importance of soil pore space. So depending on the diameter of the pore, also the pores have been divided into two major classes. One is called macropore, another is micropores. Now macropores, generally their diameter ranges between 0.08 to 5 millimeter. Now in the micropores are also subdivided into four classes. One is called mesospore, another is microspore, then ultramicrospore and cryopores. So these mesopores basically have the diameter of 0.03 to 0.08 millimeter. Micropores have diameter of 0.005 to 0.03 millimeter. Ultramicropores have diameter of 0.0001 to 0.005 millimeter, whereas cryptopores have the diameter of less than 0.0001. So as you can see, as the name suggests, these cryptopores are the finest pores which are present in the soil, whereas the macropores are the bigger pores which are present in the soil. Now from the discussion which we made for last couple of slides, it is very much clear that soil is a basically interface of four different spheres. There is atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere and biosphere. So it is basically interface between four different spheres. Now, if we talk about what are the, we have already discussed that 45% of the soil is occupied by mineral fractions. So what are these mineral fractions? Well, the soil fractions which are dominated by mineral matter can be divided into two broad categories. One is called coarser fractions, another is called finer fraction. Now among the coarser fraction there are sand and silt, and the finer fraction is clay. So the sand is the very coarse fraction, mineral fraction, which is present in the soil. As you can see, it is very gritty in nature. It will feel gritty while you touch it. Silt is coarser in nature or somewhat intermediate between sand and clay, whereas clay is the most fine fraction of the mineral which are present in the soil. Now remember that both sand, silt and clay originates from rocks. However, the chemical composition of clay is somewhat unique than the sand and silt. In case of sand and silt, they maintain the original chemical composition of their parent rock. However, to become a clay mineral, these sand and silt needs to undergo certain physical and chemical reactions, so that the clay minerals, their nature is totally different than the chemical nature of the parent rock from which they ultimately develops. So how these three fractions differ from each other? Well, the answer is their size. So if you see the sand, silt, clay and gravel, obviously anything which is beyond 2 millimeter in size cannot be considered as the soil. So anything which is below 2 millimeter will be considered as the soil component. So sand has a size varying from 0.05 millimeter to 2 millimeter. Silt has a size from 0.002 millimeter to 0.05 millimeter, whereas clay is having the size of less than 0.002 millimeter. So as you can see, clay is the finest fraction of soil, whereas silt is the, as far as the inorganic fractions are considered, clay is the finest fraction, followed by silt, and sand is the coarsest fraction. Now obviously again, the gravel which is greater than 2 millimeter in diameter cannot be considered as a soil, and it feels coarse when you feel it in your finger. Sand will have the diameter from 0.05 to 2 millimeter, and you will feel it gritty in nature. Silt will appear flowery when you will touch it, and their diameter varies from 0.002 to 0.05 millimeter. And clay, which will feel sticky when wet, will have the diameter of less than 0.002 millimeter. So you can see, depending on their size, not only they differ from each other, but also their physical texture also changes. So if we want to have a perspective of sand, silt and clay, this picture will give you better understanding. So obviously the clay is the finest fraction, and silt is the intermediate fraction, and sand is the coarsest fraction, with coarsest mineral particles which are present in the soil. So we have talked about the soil, sand, silt and clay, and Professor Das will cover the soil texture in more details, where you will learn what are the importance of the sand, silt and clay. So I am not going to the details at this point of time. Let us talk very briefly about soil water. So water is a critical agent in soil development due to its involvement in the dissolution, precipitation, erosion, transport and deposition of the material of which a soil is composed. And the mixture of water and dissolved or suspended materials that occupy the soil pore space is called the soil solution. Now, since soil water is never pure water but contains hundreds of dissolved organic and mineral substances, it may be more actually called the soil solution. So, instead of soil water, the term soil solution is much more appropriate because the soil is never pure. It contains hundreds of dissolved organic and mineral components, substances. Okay. Now, water is also very key to the, it is very important for the dissolution, precipitation and leaching of minerals from the soil profile, because it requires to dissolute the materials and also to precipitate materials and leaching of materials out of the soil profile. And also water affects the type of vegetation that grows in soil, which in turn affects the development of the soil. A complex feedback which is exemplified in the dynamics of banded vegetation patterns in semi-arid region. So basically the take home message is water affects the type of vegetation that grows in a soil. Now let us talk briefly about soil air. Now in nutrient management, soil aeration influences the availability of many nutrients. Particularly, soil air is needed by many of the microorganisms that release plant nutrients to the soil. Because as I told you, these microorganisms live within the soil and they require soil air for their respiration purposes. So, an appropriate balance between soil air and water thus must be maintained since soil air is displaced by soil water. Now, I already told you the pore space is jointly occupied by air and water, and their composition or their content varies depending on condition. So, in a dry soil where there is no water, soil may be a two-phase system when there is only solid and pore spaces which is occupied by air, and in the other extreme, the soil pore space may be totally filled with water, leaving no space for air. So, to become these organisms to be able to survive in the soil, the water needs to be displaced by air so that they can maintain their respiratory activities. And same is true for the plant roots, which also require air for their respiration purpose. Now, air can fill soil pores as water drains or is removed from soil pore by evaporation or root absorption. So, air basically fills soil pores as water drains or removed from the soil pores either by evaporation or root absorption. So, plant absorb water. So, when they absorb the water through the roots, there is some pore space which are becoming vacant, and as a result air can fill those voids, and the network of pores within the soil aerates or ventilates the soil, and this aeration network becomes blocked when water enters the soil pores. Not only both soil air and soil water very dynamic parts in the soil, but both are often inverse related, because I told you when the soil water will displace soil water can displace air from the pore space and vice versa depending on the condition. Now remember that an increase in soil water content often causes a reduction in soil aeration. So when there is a increase in soil water content, obviously that will displace the soil air, causing reduction in soil aeration, and that would create an anaerobic condition in the soil, which may lead to different types of chemical and biological reactions. Likewise, reducing soil water content may mean an increase in soil aeration also. Now, since plant roots require water and oxygen from air in pore spaces, maintaining the balance between this root and aeration and soil water availability is a critical aspect of managing cropland. So we must ensure that the soil has optimum amount of both air and water which can maintain the plant life. This is very important. Now soil air is very different than the above ground atmosphere. So if you compare the normal atmospheric air and soil air, you will see the composition wise they are different from each other. So its significant difference is between the levels of carbon dioxide. Since the soil contains high amount of carbon dioxide, oxygen levels may become limited. So basically you will see the stark difference in the concentration of carbon dioxide between the atmospheric air and the soil air, because soil air will contain more carbon dioxide than atmospheric air because of respiratory activities and subsequent accumulation of carbon dioxide within the soil. Now since plant must have oxygen to live, it is important to allow proper aeration in the soil also. So we must ensure that soil has proper aeration so that plants can live in the soil. Now the soil atmosphere is not uniform throughout the soil because there can be localized pockets of air. Now you remember that soil is a very heterogeneous mixture and soil properties vary from one place to another place. So the soil atmosphere is obviously not uniform throughout the soil because there can be localized pockets of air, and the relative humidity of soil air is close to 100% unlike most atmospheric humidity. Air in the soil often contains several hundred times more carbon dioxide. This is the stark difference between the air composition in the soil and the normal atmospheric air. So you will see that in the soil the carbon dioxide concentration is way higher than atmospheric air. The next important component of soil is soil organic matter. I told you that volume wise soil contains 5% only organic matter. However, the soil physical, chemical and biological properties are more or less governed by the soil organic matter which is present in the soil. Now, presence or absence of soil organic matter determines whether a soil is fertile or infertile. So, let us see what are the composition of soil organic matter. Now, soil organic matter also contains different components. First of all, it contains fresh residues. Suppose there is some fresh leaf falls. There are some dead bodies of plants and animals which are rotting. So all this comes under different components of organic matter. So if there is a fresh residue which contains around 10% of the soil organic matter, also there are some decomposing organic matter which is also known as active fraction, and they consist of 33 to 50% of the soil organic matter. And living organisms, I told you that the soil contains millions, billions and billions of microorganisms as also microorganisms, and they constitute less than 5% of the total soil organic matter, whereas the 33 to 50% of the soil organic matter is known as humus, which is a stabilized organic matter. So stabilized organic matter is a it has a totally changed chemical structure, and this is one of the major important part of soil organic matter that governs the soil physical, chemical and biological properties. Remember, if the soil contains high organic matter, in general we call that soil as a fertile soil. So as you can see, this is a picture of a soil which contains the huge amount of organic matter, and due to the presence of huge amount of organic matter, you can literally see different macroorganisms and also the plants which are growing over the surface. This is basically the surface O horizon, as you can see in this picture, and due to the presence of this organic matter, high amount of organic matter, you see the color is somewhat dark. So the presence of organic matter increases the soil fertility and also increase the water holding capacity. That means if the soil is having high organic matter content, it can absorb and retain more water than a soil which has less amount of soil organic matter. This is another picture taken by US Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service, and you can see here that the soil contains huge amount of organic matter, and this soil is highly fertile to support the plant growth. Okay, let us talk about the organisms in the soil. As I told you, billions and millions of organisms are present in the soil. Majority of the organisms are bacteria, actinomycetes, fungi, protozoa and nematodes, and also sometimes viruses. So you can see that there are billions and billions of microorganisms reside in the soil, and they take an important part in the soil formation, not only the soil formation but also maintaining the dynamics, chemical and biological dynamics within the soil. So this picture shows the soil food web. Obviously here the plant which prepares the this is the first trophic level. Obviously these are the photosynthesizer which produce the food due to the process of photosynthesis, and this organic matter generally occurs due to the waste, residue and metabolics from plants, animals and microbes. So from these plants we generally get this organic matter. This organic matter was generally acted by this bacteria and fungi. Okay, these bacteria get devoured by these protozoa. This fungi get devoured by these arthropods. And also in the soil you can see there are some nematodes or root feeders are present, and these arthropods are also taking these nematodes as food, and these predator arthropods can take these smaller arthropods or shredders as food, and these birds also take these bigger arthropods or predators as food. So you can see this fungi can be also taken up by these nematodes, and protozoa can be also taken up by these nematodes which are further taken up by arthropods, and arthropods can be also taken up by the animals. So you can see it from first trophic level to second trophic level, third trophic level, fourth trophic level to fifth and higher trophic levels, how the soil food web is arranged, and each and every component in this food web has their interlink. They are basically interlinked. And in the first trophic level you will see the photosynthesizer, in the second trophic level you will see decomposer, mutualist, pathogens, parasites and root feeders. In the third trophic level you will see shredders, predators, grazers, specifically these arthropods. In fourth trophic level you will see higher level predators, and the fifth and higher trophic levels you see higher level predators. So what are the functions or roles of these soil organisms? Well, they help in soil decomposition of organic matter. They helps in the release of nutrients. They helps in increasing porosity by creating burrows or pores within the soil, and also they stabilize the soil. So these are some major activities of these organisms which are present in the soil. Now what is soil fertility? Soil fertility or fertile soil will provide a continuing supply of dissolved mineral nutrients in amounts and relative proportion appropriate for optimal plant growth. So these nutrients basically include metallic elements like potassium, calcium, iron, copper, as well as non-metallic elements such as nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus and boron. So root takes these elements out of the soil solution, and the plant incorporates most of them into the organic compound that constitutes its tissue. Animals usually obtain their mineral nutrients from the soil indirectly by eating the plants. So what are these elements basically? So out of 92 naturally occurring elements, chemical elements, 17 have been shown to be essential elements, measuring that plants cannot grow. That means meaning that the plants cannot grow and complete their life cycle without them. So macronutrients, what are these macronutrients? Macronutrients are essential elements used by plants in relatively large amount, and micronutrients are those used in smaller amounts. But remember one thing, despite, irrespective of their quantity needed, both macronutrients and micronutrients are considered essential. That means without them plant cannot survive. Now these are the 17 macro and micronutrients like CHO, NPK. These are, so CHO are structural elements, NPK, CAMG, S are macro elements, and the macronutrients. Among these macronutrients, these NPK are known as the primary nutrients, and calcium, magnesium, sulfur are known as the secondary nutrients, because NPK required in greater quantity than calcium, magnesium, sulfur. And these iron, copper, zinc, manganese, chlorine, molybdenum, boron and nickel are considered as micronutrients because they recur in smaller quantities. Now plant nutrient availability is affected by soil pH. What is pH? As you know, pH is a measure of the hydrogen ion activity in the soil solution. Now soil pH is a function of many soil forming factors and is generally lower where weathering is more advanced in acidic soil. So as you know, the soil pH which is below 7 is known as acidic pH range, and any pH which is beyond 7 or greater than 7 is known as alkaline range. And each and every nutrient has their specific optimum zone of pH in which they become more available. Now when we talk about all these important aspects, it is also important to remember that many human activities degrade and pollute soils, lessening the ecosystem service provided by soils and making some soils and their runoff water harmful to our environment and human health. So different human activities can pollute the soils, which is our greatest natural resource, and also lessen the ecosystem service provided by soils and making some soils and their runoff water harmful to our environment and human health. Because this erosion causes soil degradation, as essential topsoil is lost at rates far greater than it can be replaced. So when soil erosion occurs, the soil is lost, the topmost soil is lost through either rain or air, and it will be lost, so it cannot be replaced further. So sediment, when there is a sediment which flows through water or runoff water, they reaches into the water bodies and pollutes the water, because this sediment contains different pesticides or chemicals which we generally apply in the soil for better plant growth. So as you can see, this is a example of severe gully erosion where the soil has been lost. Also some other types of soil degradation can occur. Now salinization is the buildup of salts in the soil to a point that they destroy the physical and chemical properties of soil and make it impossible for plants to take up water from the soil. So if the soil contains huge amount of salts, specifically the salts of sodium and chlorine and sulfate, so basically these salts will render the soil saline, and as a result of the salinity of the soil, plant cannot grow in that type of soil because of exosmosis process. So plant cannot grow in that type of soil where salinization occurs. So in other words, saline soils are not conducive for the growth of the plant. Now salinization is often associated with improper irrigation. If you go with improper irrigation, that means irrigating with saline water, then obviously the salinization of the land will occur and that will destroy that whole crop. Another type of degradation is there, that is called desertification. Now desertification is caused by a combination of climate changes and human induced soil degradation, such as through overgrazing. So this desertification is also another form of soil degradation. So being a soil scientists, it is very important, and also it is our overall duty to maintain the soil and to prevent it from soil pollution and soil degradation, because if the soil is getting polluted, then it cannot sustain the life on the earth. It cannot, plants cannot grow in that type of soil, and ultimately it will impact the human civilization. Similarly, soil degradation should be also minimized. There are certain ways through which we can control the soil degradation processes, and it is very important that we should maintain or judiciously apply or judiciously manage the soil for sustainable environmental management, because without the sustainable management it is not possible to maintain our civilization for a longer period of time. So what we have learned so far? We have learned that soil is a heterogeneous mixture of minerals, organic matter, air and water. So basically it is a interface of atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere and biosphere. And the mineral matter of the soil is basically divided into three major categories depending on their size or particle size diameter. Sand, silt and clay. Clays are the finest fraction, silt is the intermediate fraction, and sand is the coarsest fraction. And so sand and silt are chemically inert in nature, whereas clay is chemically active, and clay has their own mineralogical composition which is different than that of sand and silt. Sand and silt maintain their original chemical composition than that of that rock from which it develops. Okay, then we have discussed about soil water, which is also known as soil solution, which takes part in different chemical reactions like dissolution, precipitation, leaching and all these things. Soil, air and water, both of them are important for maintaining the life in the soil. So it is important that we should maintain the proper balance between soil, air and water by different management practices. And also it is important to maintain the soil organic matter is an indicator of soil quality. The good soil, good content of soil organic matter helps in different physical, chemical and biological properties, and also the higher content of soil organic matter gives you the better indicates the better physical, chemical and biological properties of the soil. We should be very, very careful about the soil pollution and soil degradation, and also we should judicially manage the soil for better or sustainable soil management to maintain our civilization. So guys, I think you have a basic overview of soils, and from the next lecture onwards we will be talking more details about different processes. For example, in the next lecture we will be talking in detail, we will be discussing the process of soil formation, and also what is weathering, what are the different types of weathering. I hope that you have gathered basic knowledge of soil, basic overview of soil. If you have any queries, please feel free to email me and I will be more than happy to answer your queries. Thank you very much. Let us meet in our next lecture.